What's going on, Vikings fans? Welcome on in the Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and coming up on today's show, we're going to be overreacting to the massive Monday Night Football victory that our Minnesota Vikings had over the Chicago Bears. And that guy right there, J.J. McCarthy, he was the man of the hour. So we'll dive into a bunch of takeaways, give you guys some crazy stats from the game. But first off, I just want to say that was my favorite Vikings game I have ever watched in my life. And even over like the Minneapolis Miracle, that one playoff win in New Orleans, the Kyle Rudolph push-off, or even the 33-0 comeback against Indianapolis Colts, for me personally, that was the most fun I've ever had watching this football team. The fight, the adversity they went through, and it all started with their quarterback and their head coach, Kevin O'Connell and J.J. McCarthy. It was the most fun and the most enjoyable game I've ever watched because it all looked like we could be looking for a new quarterback by Halloween throughout the first three quarters, but then they flipped that switch. They kept on fighting. They rallied around their quarterback. So that was one of the most enjoyable experiences for me watching the Vikes. But I'll tell you what, it started with number 9. It started with J.J. McCarthy. And if you weren't a believer before last night, I'm guessing you are now. And if you guys do believe in the franchise, the QB1 for our football team, just hit me with those 9s down below in the comment section. I'm trying to get 1,000 9s down below. So if you guys could comment his jersey number if you're a J.J. McCarthy believer. All right, so the number one takeaway, and we got to start off with the quarterback here. J.J. McCarthy is just wired different. And that is why I have been here on the show for the last almost 2 years now telling you guys why I'm such a believer in this kid. It's because of what he is between the ears. The mentality this guy has is unbelievable. And when it was all going wrong yesterday and the Vikings were down heading into the fourth quarter, J.J. McCarthy looked to his teammates in the huddle, and Aaron Jones confirmed this, and he said, "Is there any place else you guys would rather be?" The fact that this guy was playing probably one of the worst starts to an NFL debut we have ever seen, and he still just has the calm, cool, collected nature just to look at his teammates down 17-6 and be like, "Man, we're just playing football. Is there anywhere else you guys would rather be?" And then after he said that to his teammates in the huddle, this guy put on a show in the fourth quarter. 6 of 8, 101 total yards, had 3 touchdowns, and had a passer rating of 149.5. But he even goes further for what he did in the fourth quarter because it wasn't just, he flipped that switch. He completely dominated. Like, he looked like a guy who didn't belong in the NFL, and then he looked like one of the better quarterbacks in the National Football League. 22 years old, making his first start on the road. And check this out. He is the first QB to score 3 touchdowns in the first quarter of his debut. He is the first QB to rally from 10-plus down in the fourth in his debut since Steve Young. And he is the first Viking with 2 pass touchdowns and a rushing touchdown in his debut since Fran Tarkenton. But you even want more? How about this? Players with 2+ passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown in the fourth quarter over the last 4 seasons. Oh, Tom Brady did it in 2022. Dak Prescott did it in 2024. And last night on Monday Night Football, J.J. McCarthy became the 3rd player to do so. And it was incredible how he bounced back. People were saying, should they go trade for Kirk Cousins? Should they go and start Carson Wentz? Everybody was freaking out, and for right reason. Like, he did not look good for the first 3 quarters. But again, you just had to believe in the kid. You had to trust the process, and he completely flipped that script. His EPA per dropback for the first 3 quarters was negative 1.31 in the first, negative 0.3 in the second, and terrible, negative 2.77 in the third quarter. But then in the fourth, this would have been the highest in the National Football League if he had this throughout the whole game in week 1. He had a plus 0.93 EPA per dropback. That was fantastic. And then even the advanced stats, they're not going to blow you away because this guy really only had one big-time quarter in this game, but he had one big-time throw. He had one turnover-worthy play that obviously, went to the house. His ADOT was 7.8, adjusted completion percentage very solid at 83.3, and his pressure-to-sack ratio was about a half. So, JJ, in the end, super proud of this kid. Like, everything he was going through, just who he is between the ears is why I'm such a believer. And you also saw that team rally around him. When he pulled that read option, got in the end zone, everybody's rushing over to him. The whole coaching staff is mobbing this guy. You could tell there is a different pulse about this Vikings team with J.J. McCarthy at the helm, and everybody was freaking out for the first 3 quarters. How could they just let Sam Darnold walk out the door? How could they say no to Aaron Rodgers? It's because Kevin O'Connell picked this kid. This is Kevin O'Connell's guy. And for all those people trying to take victory laps after the first 3 quarters, acting like they know more about the quarterback position than Kevin O'Connell, they're looking silly right now. Hopefully you guys still have some time to delete some of those tweets. But shout out to number 9, man. He looked awesome. And then you got to give a shout out to the rest of this team as well. The defense kept them in this game, and specifically Brian Flores. With all the talk around him heading into this game, Ben Johnson owns you. You know, Ben Johnson's going to hang another 30-piece on this defense, and it was looking like it after the first drive. But outside of the opening drive, the defense was absolutely fantastic. I know you gave up that late touchdown when it was a 2-score game. You necessarily almost shut this Bears offense out. Brian Flores was bringing it, and that was without 2 of his main contributors in Harrison Smith. And then also you lose Blake Cashman, the guy who wears the green dot, and we know how impactful Cashman is. You were able to do all that, shut down Ben Johnson and this Bears offense, where on paper they should have no holes. They paid a lot of money for that offensive line. They got all the weapons you could imagine. You got the number 1 pick at quarterback. You got everybody's prodigy in Ben Johnson, and Flores delivered. But also the Vikings in week 1 had the most pressures in the National Football League out of any given team with 30, and it started with the man up top. Javon Hargrave looked unbelievable last night. Also had 2 TFLs, so he was good in the run game. But Jonathan Greenard, even though he didn't get home, still had 7 pressures. And then Jonathan Allen, 6 pressures from the interior. Dallas Turner got in there and had 2, and Ivan Pace had 2 as well. But also got to give a massive shout-out to the safety position. Jay Ward stepped in there yesterday, and he played fantastic football. He was all over the football field. We saw his versatility, and we talk about Kwesi not being able to draft. Jay Ward might be a home run pick. Also shout out to Josh Metellus. Levi Drake Rodriguez had a massive day stopping the run. Same with TID, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, and Jonathan Greenard was the 5th highest Vikings defender according to PFF. But Jay Ward looked amazing. Josh Metellus looked damn good. And you got to love those 2 young interior defensive linemen getting it done as well. So we'll dive into more takeaways here in a second. But if you guys could, hit that subscribe button today. We're closing in here on 60,000 subscribers. We just need 473 more of you guys to hit that subscribe button today. So if you guys have not subscribed just yet to the channel, change that right now. Hit that subscribe button. And we'll dive into more takeaways here in a second. But before we do so, I got to give a massive shout out to today's presenting sponsor, and that is Factor Meals. Now head over to factormeals.com/VikingsChat50 off and plug in promo code VikingsChat50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Now here covering the Minnesota Vikings, I work a pretty busy schedule, and sometimes all I've got is a couple of minutes. And Factor helps me eat smarter with tasty, chef-prepared meals that are dietitian-approved and delivered right to my door. And now with more than 65 weekly meals made for how I live and what I like to eat, I've got even more ways to fit in a real meal wherever the day takes me. And why I love Factor, they got more variety and just more meals. Choose from a wider selection of weekly meal options, including premium seafood choices like salmon and shrimp, at no extra cost. Also, Factor is great for supporting your wellness goals. Even more GLP-1 friendly meals and new Mediterranean diet options packed with protein and good for you fats. So if you guys could head over to factormeals.com/VikingsChat50 off and use promo code VikingsChat50 off for 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code VikingsChat50 off at factormeals.com for 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Get delicious, ready-to-eat meals delivered with Factor. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. But shout out to Factor. Plug in that promo code VikingsChat50 off at factormeals.com/VikingsChat50 off. All right, let's dive into the rest of the takeaways here. Jordan Mason was an absolute freak show yesterday. We saw the physicality with this guy, and that's why we have been talking about, the last couple of years under Kevin O'Connell. This has been more of a finesse football team. How do you change yourself from a finesse football team to a physical football team? You go bring in some physical football players, and Jordan Mason is just that. And I thought it was clear who the better pure runner of the football was between Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason last night. I mean, you can just lean on this guy. When it's all going bad, when you can't get anything going offensively, you can just turn around, hand that ball to 27, and he'll get the most out of every single carry. I mean, 15 carries for 68 yards yesterday. I think that's just a baseline of what he's going to do. He's going to have multiple games this season where he runs for over 100 yards, and he just looked fantastic. Everything we've been talking about this offseason came to fruition in week 1 for Jordan Mason, but also got to give credit to Aaron Jones. He's a hell of a pass-catching back. That touchdown catch he had was unbelievable. Also had a massive first down late in the game, but 3 receptions, 44 yards. If you're getting this production out of the running back position, you'll take this any day of the week. Considering the offense for 3 quarters couldn't do anything, and you still had this production out of these 2 guys. So shout out to Jordan Mason, shout out to Aaron Jones, and shout out to the special teams. Probably the unsung hero of yesterday's game was the special team stepping up, and one, Will Reichard, making a 59-yard kick at the end of the first half. That was massive. But also the new punt returner, Miles Price. This guy had a total of 117 return yards yesterday for the UDFA out of Indiana, who fought his tail off to make this roster. And then his first ever game with the Minnesota Vikings, he was making big-time plays. We were talking about the field position battle in the first half. The Vikings were always backed up. The Bears were getting good field position, but that completely changed because Miles Price was flipping the field, where in the fourth quarter, the Vikings were almost starting every possession at around midfield because of that guy. Miles Price has some juice, and also Eric Wilson looked awesome on the kick unit. Also blocked a punt yesterday, was making plays defensively. It feels good to have Eric Wilson back in the purple and gold. So those 2 guys making plays, and also my guy Will Reichard knocking through that 59-yarder. Tied for the longest field goal ever made in Soldier Field. So shout out to Will the Thrill, number 16. And lastly here, that was just a typical Minnesota Vikings win. That was a culture win. And, I think when we talk about one-score victories in the NFL, people kind of just chalk it up as a fluky, kind of fugazi stat. I think one-score wins, that speaks to the head coach, and that speaks to the culture in the building. Like, the Chiefs are fantastic in one-score games. The Bills are fantastic in one-score games because they got generational quarterbacks and they got generational head coaches there. And the biggest reason to believe in this Vikings team is because of Kevin O'Connell. If you guys haven't checked out his post-game speech in the locker room yesterday, it will have chills going up your spine. The just command this guy has, and just the leader of men who, like he is truly special. We all know he is an elite offensive play caller. We all know he is probably the best quarterback-friendly head coach there possibly is in the NFL right now, but it goes further than that. It's the culture he has in this building. It's just the belief that these players have where every single week, no matter what the score is, no matter how the game's going, they still believe they can win that football game. And then you pair KOC and that mindset and that culture he has with a guy like J.J. McCarthy who has alligator blood in his veins. It's going to be a perfect marriage. These 2 are going to run the NFC North for a very long time, and it started last night, and what a perfect start to the J.J. McCarthy, Kevin O'Connell era here in Minnesota. But if you guys made it to the end of today's show, we appreciate you. Just give me a scold down below in the comment section if you guys watch this entire thing. We'll be live later on the channel today, breaking down the game more, also giving you guys a preview for next week's game against the Atlanta Falcons. But we'll see you guys next time. As always, Skol Vikes.